Hello, my name is Eliyahu. I'm Russian Israeli, but I guess you might already have figured it out from my accent. Prior to my current position, I was a full time pen tester and a CNAC Red Team member. Today, I'm working as a principal consultant in Singapore, providing advisory on cybersecurity aspects of emerging technology and supporting our bank's strategic projects. Some of the projects that I'm working currently are digital small screens for retimers, which already have been submitted to Meter, and now I'm working on another study, how hackers impacting the financial markets, which is pretty fun so far. And yeah, I enjoy cooking, doing research, and writing. So Begum is my mentoree. She has recently graduated and has a great interest in cybersecurity, but she could not attend today's talk. So please let me read the disclaimer now to let us get started. The views and opinions expressed in this presentations are solely our own and do not express the views or opinions of our employers. So you're probably asking yourself if this is just another talk on ATOs. But in this talk, I want to take you through the end-to-end ecosystem of automated account takeovers while treating the cybercrime as a fully functioning, profit-driven business industry, considering the status quo that enables the automated ATOs. I also want to discuss my take on the reasons behind the rise in account takeovers and the account frauds. And this is regardless of the great progress that has been happening recently in overall cybersecurity awareness, whether it's in private or public campaigns. And finally, I will share my recommendations and suggestions to users and companies as someone that comes from a corporate background and not as a vendor. Therefore, I believe my opinions will be unbiased. During this study, we researched more than 30 techniques of ATOs to understand the overall ATO threat landscape. But we decided to take a deeper look on one specific ATO, an ATO that seems to be getting a lot of attention and seeing continuous growth as one of the easiest attacks to automate. This attack offers high gains even for low-grade criminals with an access to a few easy-to-operate tools, and a massive innovation industry that works behind the scenes, an industry that continuously supports and develops new countermeasures to minimize automated account takeovers costs. Meaning, no, anyone with a passion or a need for extra cash just could hop on and start ATOing. As you might already have guessed, the most obvious attack method in this list, which is also easy to automate in mass scale, is credential stuffing. We just took this method as an example to explore the world of automated account takeovers. I could also point you to some of the most interesting ATOs methods that I have studied and practiced before, like the SDK-based ATOs and cognitive hacks that lead to ATO. It is good also to point out that the improper authentication vulnerability is getting a lot of attention in HackerOne bug bounties programs as an attack that could obviously lead to ATOs. If you would like to drill down to any of the mentioned ATO attacks, please free to ask me during the Q&A or send me your questions on LinkedIn, email, or Twitter. I'll be available for this. So let's start by covering the overview of climate fostering ATOs. Let us take a closer look and understand the type of relationship between criminals, companies, and their users as a factor to ATO growth, particularly to automated ATOs. In one hand, the level of cybercriminal sophistication is lowered within access to easy-to-operate tools, continuous data leaks from companies that are collecting our KYC data, or leaks of credentials that are being published in the market within few minutes from the breach. Today, in the world of E2E platforms like Telegram and other platforms, cybercriminals are no longer even required to have the knowledge of how to access darknet marketplaces or maintain their anonymity. On the other hand, companies negotiating today and buying back their breach data of the customers from cyber criminals, paying off ransom or hiring external companies to help them do that. This is obviously going against the official recommendations such as those from FBI. Companies adopting hypes like passwordless and promoting immature authentication models like those in biometrics, with a current CAGR of 90% growth in this industry, which is amazing. I expressed my worries about biometrics and in access channels in the paper, so I am not planning to go through them here. I also don't not gonna go through why customers still prefer using passwords. So this was mentioned in our paper, and I really refer you to that. We can also find today companies that specialize from such criminals activity indirectly. So some activities that being capitalized by companies happens by adopting uh, sharing credentials as a strategy to raise brand awareness and having a bigger bite of their market. A good example of such companies are the subscription-based companies like the movie streaming subscriptions that we know all about. But I will just avoid mentioning the names because I'm pretty sure you can guess this through. Companies that are putting in place not adequate countermeasures to prevent automatic mass buyouts in retail platforms to increase brand hype culture. Good example for this case is the known sneakers brands that tend to sell out in moments right after they've been on a shelf. And companies like social media giants with big budgets but still struggling to self-regulate themselves to detect fake accounts and malicious account activity in their platforms. The last point that I want to mention is the growing business models which are leveraging user data. So seeing a decrease in our data being found is not so realistic, especially when a number of data breaches are, as well as the average of cost of data breach is growing based on the Identity Theft Resource Center report. I want to share with you an interesting experiment conducted by NATO. NATO tried to shed some more light on the self-regulation challenges that our tech giants dealing with. In this experiment, NATO team bought engagement of 100 different posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, using 11 Russian and 5 European social media manipulation service providers. They spent €300 on 3,000 comments, 25,000 likes, 20,000 views, and 5,000 followers. NATO team were able to identify almost 90,000 accounts which were being used for social media manipulation. One, one good one good example that you might heard of was last year from Facebook that reported that they removed 2.2 billion fake accounts from their platform. To sum up, self-regulation by these tech giants doesn't seem to work, or there is a lack in having a significant commitment to handle this issue. So one question that is raising is, at least for me, if we are enabling cyber criminals to develop automation tools to manage so many fake accounts without much pushback, should we expect such companies to lead the expected change? My answer for this question is absolutely no. We should be very honest with ourselves, providing such catalysts to cyber criminals that enables the continuous development in such attack method. But not only that, actually. Such enablement goes far beyond account takeovers that don't have a big enablement that goes beyond the accounts that don't have big financial impact on us. Such enablement creating an ecosystem where cyber criminals developing new bypass to ATO, anti-fraud controls, and other security controls that keep being developed to be bypassed, as we noticed in our study and far beyond. To illustrate a similar POC but in a much smaller scope, I put my personal Instagram to test. I bought a gig from Fiverr that promise me 1,000 brand new followers to like my posts whenever I post them, even if it's something silly like a photo of my fan. And so, as you see, my new fake friends keep supporting me by liking and commenting on my post within seconds of my post. I cannot lie, this is nice to have such a close friends that can appreciate precious moments of my life. Now that we covered companies and cyber criminals aspects of this relationship, let's close this loop with our future users and clients. For this purpose, I want to share with you this data glimpse from a data report. This report can show us how our future clients base is increased as the digital adoption keeps growing. Looking at these figures from this report and other related reports like the one from Edelman, we notice that the growing population is more connected to the internet and the number of accounts per user is growing. We also notice an important figure showing that people trust on how their data is being handled by the tech companies is diminishing. I think we all can agree when we say that living in an era of having an online presence comes with a direct cost of having a great chance of being found. So here I also want to share with you some of the ATO costs and figures that we managed to collect from the most reliable sources we could find. And yes, it was not an easy challenge. So looking at the first one, account fraud. The last figures reported by Javelin Strategy Research in their 2020 report was that 6.8 billion in losses just in the US. And this is obviously a huge, maybe not huge, but very sharp growth from the last year report, which reported $4 billion in losses. When looking at the operational costs, we have help desk costs with an average of $15 per ticket and $2 on average per minute talking to help desk. Such costs quickly become massive when looking at some of the latest credential stuffing attacks, like the one that happened in Disney. Just on a side note, myself and Begum submitted a Disney case with a full analysis to Cloud Security Alliance. This analysis should be published in the Egregious Cloud Computing Top Threats report that should be published soon. So regarding some of the trust costs, we observe figures stating that if there is a breach, 81 of the people would stop engaging with the brand online, but there are many other different cost parameters that should be considered here. So this parameter is very problematic, but still we can see high growth in acquisition of the user costs. So definitely there is not only a trust issue here, but also an increase in acquisitions, the future acquisition costs. I remind you my contact is published, so please free to contact me and ask me more questions on any of these costs. We can go drill down to any of them one by one. The next step, we will cover the role of credential stuffing in automated ATO accounts. So this is a life cycle of automated ATOs with a closer look from a credential stuffing perspective, as this is a classic example for an automated ATO. A big portion of this life cycle applies very much to any type of ATO, and not just automated, as you might already noticed. First, let's start by covering some of the reported stats to get quick idea on where we are today. There are 50,000 unique IP addresses making credential stuffing attempts on a daily basis. 60% people answered in a large survey that they're using one or more passwords across multiple accounts. Users reuse the same password usually 4 to 6 times. Users have 90 accounts on average each. So now let's go through the steps of the life cycle, and later we will cover them more in that. So the first step is acquiring access. So in this first phase, where the criminal will acquire compromised account log, with usually using anonymous wallets, those wallets that usually don't require to have the KYC process to be followed, or those credentials could be the account log could be purchased using obviously the compromised credit cards that could be found for a few dollars. Resources for this are in the white paper, so if you guys interested, please go ahead. So the next step will be the preparation phase. In the subsequent phase, basically the preparation. So what's happening in the preparation? This is where the cyber criminal will start configuring their tools for the attack. An attack in the next step is the attack obviously is the cyber criminal is performing an attack and creating his persistence over the attack. In the reconnaissance, we are preparing reliable pretexts if and when it will be required for the strike, basically the cashing in phase. Example for this, get as much information as possible with the OSINT, SOCMINT, which is basically social intelligence gathering, and DSRs. So DSRs, maybe it's a new term that is out there. Data access right exploits, the ability to request access to all personal information a company has on the individual. Best to listen to Amber Welch on this topic, on creating a pretext. Atul Dennis will be a great person to check on. Those two persons like really good, and I learned from them a lot. The next step will be cashing in. Following this step, basically, is the cyber criminals finished their research on the victim. They know basically everything that they could from the victim itself, and now they will start taking actions. Taking actions basically to monetize how they're gonna monetize the ATO. An example will be to set a request for a loan, or request to increase the credit limit, or issue new credit cards. The next step is a cashing out phase. Lastly, in this step, where the cyber criminal is focused on moving everything that they got from the cashing in process to their own accounts. So let's go through the acquiring credentials. I think many people already familiar with this. So let's just cover it. So acquiring access is the first step in the life cycle of automated ATOs. So in this step, where the cyber criminals are actually going after the credentials to get an ATO. Usually those credentials can be found in reputable and well-known account shops, with a high rank sellers, obviously, that will have their own reviews, comments, how good they are, and will obviously publish those across different forms to make sure that everyone knows who is the most trustworthy resource to get their credentials. But it's not only credentials, as we will mention later. So the prices go usually from $5 to $250. Obviously, we can find much lower prices, but this is the prices that you will see from the people that actually have good comments and good reviews. When the cyber criminal is buying an account log from such shop, the cyber criminal is usually getting a few things packaged, like having their account log and a seller will be validated by the account shop administrators. The second point is that the cyber criminals could get a digital mask as part of the account log package. And last thing, the criminal will get is the experience of customer service, which means having a guarantee of a fully working, functioning account log. Just going back to the digital mask, or they have so many names, doppelgangers, and so many different names that you'll find them online. Those usually used to bypass fraud detections and other verification mechanisms, containing usually victims' unique behaviors like tap touch account frequency, browsing patterns like screen time or field user interests, victim's device fingerprints like device ID or OS version. Interesting enough, just to mention, if you asking where they are coming from, and some of the research that being through this is basically that identified that this digital masks or doppelgangers are found through delivered by the operators of info stealing malware like Azure Road. So bunch of those kind of malware uh, operators are providing this kind of thing to these shops in a mass. So there is some worry about how this kind of shops will operate, and looking at their supply chain, getting a bit worried if such phenomenon can continue. The other option to get the account credentials, logs, it's mostly account credentials, is basic to purchase or find online, find them basically online for free, or have them the most updated list that could be found out there. The updated lists usually are filtered from the accounts that most likely are not valid after they've been checked with a username, if the username is valid or not. Some of them will be filtered by removing all the famous passwords that being reused so many times, and all the by obviously remove the duplicates. So all this famous collection kind of combo lists are being through this process. So usually you can find them all for free, but you can find them also for a small fee. And of course, we have the very new interesting services like combo as a service that are available today and different to be purchased on different forms. So when we're going to the attack phase of basically validating the accounts, we have 5 tools, aka bots, which you will quickly able to identify which were better than the other one. So let's start with the most basic one, the quick checkers, like the Office 365 email checkers, which is used as a first filter, check if the victim's accounts is really working by basically verifying if the email is valid, which is in many cases used as a username. So usually such tools will also come with a function to merge, organize for easier use. But you will see them in most of the tools. Those kind of basic additional functions for this kind of easy to use tools as a first stage. So the next type of tools are the dedicated tools like the Netflix checker. These kind of tools have been configured with a specific target with a limited option in their settings, like changing the type of proxy, loading the combo list, and like the infamous collection 2 through 5. Those obviously will have their own headers being configured, and this is like how they get the latest versions for every one of those tools. There are also legitimate tools like OpenBullet that originally were developed for developers, QA, and ethical hackers, but cyber criminals defer them to their own malicious ends. Obviously, not something that we are super surprised by, because this is not a new fact that cyber criminals usually using legitimate tools to gain access or to do anything. And so this is like very not new, especially on the Windows exploits and binaries. So this is just going one step further. And we have the iOS all-in-one tools like Sniper, and those that come preloaded with official configs and with an option to configure your own and then upload them. In many cases, cyber criminals have a specific target that they usually have in their mind that probably are not in the official configs. This will require many of these beginners to start their search for custom configs on different forums like the Discord channels, Telegram groups, and the obvious one, which seems like what's happening in most cases, is basically just hire a freelancer in a bunch of freelancer shops. From what I saw, there are several freelancing platforms that very much hinting that they can do what the cybercriminal is looking for. Um, those freelancers could be found for $10 to $15. I'm talking only about the good ones with a high ranking on those freelancing websites. Obviously, we could find them for $2 and $3, but if you want to get your job done, usually this is the range of prices. And the last and most sophisticated type of tool is not really a tool, but an option to script your own tool option. Basically using a Phantom.js, Ripple.js, using emulation libraries like Puppeteer and Selenium. The last two options usually go together with the use of digital mask, if there is such. In case an attack is targeted on a specific victim, this generally means the criminal will use a remote server with RDP, which could be found basically for $2-3, a VPS, or their own configured sandbox that goes through a residential proxy, which amazingly enough could be found within few miles of the victim's house. Cyber criminals looking forward for the next generation bedbots version, which is not so far away. Those are basically the next generation are basically AI enhanced systems that evaluate the bedbots to the beyond level 2 of automation. So to get a better idea of what is level 2, 3, and 4, just to get through this, where are we from the automation side? I guess you will see this in many other industries, but we see this in automated bad bots as well. And for this, I will refer to you to go to check Christopher Valek's great presentations on this. He's explaining this in much verbosity, and really great to hear his opinions about this as well. So in the cashing in phase, I will cover what makes criminals busy once they secure their access to the account. A good start to share right from the start is that most of the ATOs last less than 24 hours. In many cases, we're talking about only a few minutes and sometimes a few hours. So this might sound like a long process, but it's a very short one for most of the cases. So let's go one by one and understand them. An example where cybercriminals have an ATO or of a bank account for this example. So this is where the criminals will apply for a home, car, personal loans, or even apply for mortgages. The next one is where the criminals will try to perform different export data access exploits. Basically, get all the information that the company is storing on the client. This information will be used for the second and the third tier attacks. A good example will be where this information will be sold to the support teams, where they will be basically calling those people and trying to say, hey, we know everything about you, and your account was stuck, and let me just reset your account, or any of those type of scams that is happening. I have great examples in the white paper, and I researched this quite a lot, so it's really amazing to see how even those kind of tier 2 attacks are being progressed. The tier 3 most likely will be those that creating new accounts based on this information. And basically most of this to pass the KYC process. So criminals will also try to request and later exploit credit limit extensions. Credit limit extension is also used for loans, but also used for getting a credit for your account. So the next one will be criminals will request to issue credit cards or debit cards and ask them to have it sent to their mail drop. Mail drops today is very not hard thing to do. This is in most cases you can find this in for a public service services provide mail drops. I know it's unusual, but many people are using this kind of services to have their merchandise sent to a country that the originate country is not sending the merchandise to. So just the mail drop, very not unusual service, and cyber criminals are really leveraging this. So the last one, the criminal, not really a last one, but one of them interesting ones, the cyber criminals could be paid to serve as a money mules independently or even export their services to be managed by the money mule herders. Some other activities can include apply and enable services like Payla, those are the P2P payments, convert money to rewards, etc. So let's cover the ATO pricing and selling. ATO pricing, pricing of any ATO is not an easy job for individual criminal who needs to do the pricing of the ATO based on the different account factors as shown in the slide. Some of the examples, as you guys see already, victims' financial history, basically looking at them account aging factor, account balance, obviously, confirmed future payments, credit score, social score. Social score is based on the concepts that from the stage that was done. Digital mask, as we mentioned, and the last one that I want to mention is the age segmentation and ATO cost changes, as there is also substantial behavior change in their age patterns behaviors like we can see very honestly like from millennials and seniors, very different behaviors, and there is even a term for that, age associated financial vulnerability, or AAFV. Pricing becomes even more challenging when it comes to a mass ATOs, which being controlled and managed by organized threat groups. These groups will usually have their own facilitators like accountants and other service providers. To talk more on how the how the threat groups are pricing and what is the ranges here, you please contact me directly, or we can do this on a questions and answers phase. So once the pricing is done, this is where the cash once the pricing is done, and this is where we are looking at the selling platforms and the facilitators. So basically, criminals can, when they want to sell the logs, they can use several options, and let's just mention some few of the obvious ones maybe. So middleman services that could be found in forms, even offered by the forms administrators themselves, with a promise that they won't run an escrow exit scam on you. In many cases, such services using instant vault services. Basically, when I pay, I get an email and link to the instant vault. Once I pay, the vault is opening. I can get my whatever I've been purchased as a client. So this kind of services obviously provide some quality assurance and money transfer assurance that the two parties, the buyer and the seller, are not always can find the right way to agree on. Such middle services are not only providers for credentials demand services, but also providing subscription services. So basically putting many of those administrators of forms providing this kind of services, which is also very good for buyers and sellers. So the sellers, of course, getting a very good price and quick to market, and just getting their money very quick. One more option is the obvious one: sell the log on account shops, marketplaces. with the sellers and with the seller commissions for 5 to 15% The other option is to sell independently in a digital and tangible storefronts. For example, Shopee, Sally, Deer.io. These services are offered for a small monthly fee. This type of stores can even be embedded directly within web forms and even DMs. This is an amazing progress, putting a storefront in the post themselves, which I found like as amazing progress for what I knew. The last option is obviously is to use the P2P platforms like Telegram groups and channels. In the cashing out phase, criminals are focusing on what they could do uh, after what was already done on the cashing in phase, besides the obvious action of reselling the account. So as we mentioned before, what the criminals can do to leverage on the whatever the account has to get this to their own accounts. To securely transfer funds or any value from the victim's account, criminals need to be equipped with, and they are equipped with understanding of original and international legal, regulatory, and operational measures, and AML restrictions like the ones that have been adopted due to the Patriot Act, with a notable example that requires trades and businesses to report cash transactions of more than $10,000. Cybercriminals also understand if they will try to outsmart this restriction, they could be issued with a suspicious activity report, which is basically SAR, as we might have this recently from few banks. All these different types of restrictions will usually be bypassed with alternative methods to move the money, such as smurfing method, which is basically means breaking down the cash into smaller chunks and depositing them to a different accounts. Some other ways are point transfer, as we might all know, sending gift cards, using P2P payments to send money to criminal accounts using services like PayNow here in Singapore, and I'm sure you guys have it in any other country or not. Account transfer, this is some of the interesting one, maybe interesting option, is basically taking the account as a ransom after changing maybe the authentications and the email. So this is like where the user will take, where the cyber criminal will take the account as a ransom and call the call or message or whatever the victim and try to get some of the money. This is very similar to the other attacks that we see from the extortions. Same patterns, basically some very similar patterns that they're coming up with on this attack. So now let's finish up with the lessons and learnings. So we noticed that companies not only looking wholly. Yeah. So let's just cover some of the learnings. Avoid the adoption of weak attitudes and mentalities like assume breach and not if but when. Use one or more lookup service. Some of the services like can be used with APIs that could be found in have I been found yet, or any other service that provide this kind of services. The third one is adopt unified standard for multi-channel account access. This is where basically we need to make sure that the account access across the platforms are unified. We found several companies that using even different password policies for their channels. Then obviously there's the ATO that we spoke about in the white paper, which is cross ATO, is where when one account compromise, the way to compromise the account is being leveraged to the other account credentials. Like one of them will be if I have an access to Facebook, I can access the account, even though I don't have the credentials themselves. So all this kind of access channels needs to be verified and understood in a to go through them one by one and really understand how they can be crossed. Uh, treat security as a profit driven by incentivizing users to adopt MFA through customer engagement. So amazing examples for those will be the MailChimp that offering 10% discount for 3 months, even when the client to make the clients adopt the 2FA. And one example is coming from the Epic Games, came from Epic Games, when they rewarded the Fortnite players who been asked to set the 2FA for store credit. Avoid buying bot management tools just because it's blocking bad bots. So not only all bad bots are the same, we mentioned few tools that basically are the bad bots. So we cannot really say what are the bad bots and some tool that can really stop the bad bots. I saw so many solutions out there talking about bad bots, and every time, like when I was looking at them, it was very confusing what they are really trying to say and what are the bad bots. So just go drill down to every one of those, the bad bots, when they are talking about bad bots, and understand what they are trying to prevent. Be aware of data access rights exploits and ask help if you struggle to self-regulate your user accounts. So again, as we discussed from the NATO experiment, if you are not able to self-regulate, please, there are so many different companies that can help you out there. So please go ahead and ask their help. Going back to the one of the main factors that being asked, and we spoke about this, is optimize your MFA structure. So creating collaboration among UI, UX developers, customer experience engineers, business leads, software engineers, and test testers, having such maybe not war rooms, but at least having such meetings to get the idea how to configure them in the right way. Second one will be prioritize frictionless UX while minimizing security risks, which fits your business flows and your requirements. We saw from our experience, at least my experience, that companies adopting the structure of MFA based on their competitors or something that their vendors told them so. So just try to understand your business flows, your return flows, how you return the merchandise to the client. All these kind of flows could be structured in a way that you don't need to compromise the user experience. And the last one is consider pros and cons of different structures and how to combine the 3 types of MFA in continuous, adaptive, and rotative authentication process. I know that continuous, adaptive, and rotative maybe sound similar, but every one of them is very different that we discussed on the white paper, and I hope you will be able to, if you are interested in this, just please go ahead and ask me any question on every one of those factors. So for users, maybe it will be a bit unconventional, but those are our suggestions. Subscribe for lookup services such as Have I Been Pounded, Breach Alarm, or Dehashed, one of those services that could help you to get to know if you've been compromised or your account been compromised. Every one of them have a different kind of services. This is why I mentioned. So one of them will show you the password, one of them will not show you the password. So it depends what you're comfortable with. Again, you can ask me questions about every one of them, and I can help you to choose the best one. Use password managers for all your accounts that are not financially critical to you. Share passwords in a responsible way. I'm not going to tell you not to share the password. I can tell you that I'm sharing the passwords. So let's just do it in a responsible way, and we should not really say to ourselves like, let's be very honest, and this is what I'm saying. Just do it in a responsible way, because many of us are sharing passwords, and this is something that being, as we said before, acceptable by many companies as well. Get familiar with a way to set security freeze on credit reports in your country. very important to be very available to if any of those will try to contact you. So be sure that you have your email, your phone number updated. Stay available to your critical account providers, and don't follow bias surveys and studies. Those that we saw so many of them during our study. Using multi-factor authentication blocks 99.9 of the account hacks. Two-factor authentication blocks 100 automated bot hacks. These two were mentioned by two tech giants, but I don't really want to mention their names. Another one is to enable 2FA for all your accounts. And yeah, I believe many of us think that YubiKey is a cool concept, but do we really need one more physical key in our pockets? And the last one is pretty much very new to me: zero trust contact policy. Using slogans like "hang up and call your financial institutions." In most cases, when I personally hang up my phone and call back, I go forward to a bot. So such recommendations might have a good intentions, but as companies, we just don't have such such tools to accommodate this kind of recommendations. So that's it. This is the step will be for Q&A.